For me, I think human being is most profound thing on this planet. Whatever experiences, whatever background, whatever kind of world they come from, figure is fundamental. But I'm not really too keen in terms of the likeness or looking like particularly person. In my work, the simplicity of images and the spiritual content is fundamental to my own journey and my own being. And that's what fascinates me, and that's what makes me getting up every day and wanting to paint. Hello, I am Shanti Panchal, a watercolor artist at Jackson Studio. And I'm here to talk about my practice as a painter. I grew up mainly in a remote village in Gujarat, in Western India. In the village, we had no school, but we had a school started under a tree. They have a kind of textbook which has illustrations, which I used to copy and enjoy very much. And I always found doing art was fascinating. I think since I was 10-year-old, I always thought I wanted to be an artist, although I never understood what art is as we know. So most people in the village were illiterate. My parents could not read or write. Teacher had to, of course, record everybody's date of birth. So, of course, nobody had a date of birth. And the day the school started, so it was like 1st of June, all the kids had the same date of birth. So when I go to the village now, everybody celebrates on the same day. Which normally is never possible. But this is how kind of part of the world where I grew up. It's a small village and all houses were made of mud wall houses. There is no bricks and mortar. So you can imagine annually my mother would mix the cow dung and the soil in order to cover the walls to kind of refresh it. My earliest creative memory was like when they have a wedding, somebody getting married, or if they have a festival like Diwali or any other festival, they used to whitewash all the mud wall houses. And then they would ask me whether I could sort of decorate it. So it's quite primitive in that sense. So, of course, we had no colors or brushes. My uncles who had carpentry workshop, they used red clay to mark on the wood to cut in a straight line. So then I used that red clay and then I would climb on a neem tree, cut a thin branch of a tree, and then hammer it one end to make a brush. So that crude brush and the red clay only on this whitewash wall, I would sort of paint very simple images like birds and animals and trees and so on. Growing up in the village, like in a monsoon, everything floods and we would swim through the mud. So you almost become part of the nature. And because of that, you were exposed to totally raw natural forces. We slept under a starry sky. And when you look at the sky, it almost feels like it's sitting on your head. You almost can catch them, touch the stars. So you can imagine those kind of experiences gone through and connected with the organic world of kind of growing up. We had only primary school up to when you were about 10, 12 years. And I always wanted to study. So I had to run away from home when my parents were in the other village. So I came to Mumbai where my oldest brother was there. So I stayed there and did my high school, 3 years. I studied in a school which was run by a spiritual teacher, which I had opportunity to study like Indian scriptures, like the oldest one was Upanishads and Vedas, and of course Bhagavad Gita as part of the Mahabharata and Ramayana. After high school, I really wanted to go to art college. Unfortunately, there was nobody could really fund me. But I was very fortunate that my art teacher at that time in high school, he saw that I was really interested and I was good at art as well. So he said, look, I can pay your fee and you can stay and sleep in my office and clean the office as kind of, payment to his fee. And that's how I did first year college in JJ School of Art in Mumbai. I was mainly working in oils on canvas and I very much enjoyed. I did also a lot of figurative painting mainly. We had to copy Indian miniature I chose to copy one of the Jain miniature, which are the earliest Jain miniature known in India. They had very primitive in a sense, but they're still very rich and beautiful. If they're showing a figure, for example, in profile, they would show both the eyes, one in the background and one in the face. And I think that fascinated me because it was not like what it should look like, but what it feels like. If you look at my painting in their eye, even in the profile, you see the full eye, which you will not be able to see if you're physically looking at it. One of my show was called Windows of the Soul, and I think we are able to express all the emotions through our eyes. But I'm not really interested in that sense like what it should look like. I'm interested what it feels like, how I could express emotions and feelings about images. That is why the eyes is the windows of the soul. And also, I copied Rembrandt's self-portrait, which was fascinating for me to experience how these artists, both in miniature artists and Western painting, were made. So those experiences were very important and eye-opening. I did actually was like teacher's training, so I could then teach as an art teacher in high school and then also go to art college. I did private tuitions in the evening, and that's how I supported my education. After I finished my college, I got a fellowship in the same college, so I could teach there. So I taught there 6 months, and I was invited to teach in another art college. During those 2 years, I had applied for a British Council scholarship, and I never thought I would really get even an interview. To my surprise, that I was awarded the scholarship. So that was pretty shocking kind of experiences as well. Of course, I was pretty nervous and I'd never been anywhere outside India. But I came to London, and I think the British Council was amazing. They've transformed so many people's lives. It's a life-changing experiences. And I went to Barhamshire School of Art. Being in London, being able to see all the real painting in museums and art galleries, Tate Gallery, National Gallery, I could see all those paintings which I had used to see in the books. And it was an amazing experience. And this is what I found is true learning in that sense. Also, I had an opportunity from college. We went to Amsterdam and so Rijksmuseum. And then next to that was the Van Gogh Museum, which I've seen so many images. But this is a real painting. In Amsterdam, when I saw the paintings by Vermeer, Dutch painter, I was fascinated because I thought they were massive in a huge scale, but they were not that big. They're about 2 feet, 3 feet. But the kind of space and kind of clarity they evoked is amazing. They look vast. Also, William Blake's work I found really profoundly moving. Even today, I think William Blake has influenced a generation of artists in many different ways. There are also another reason for me was his use of watercolor. I think studying in Mumbai and also studying in London, it was wonderful to combine East and West. I was studying here for 2 years and had to go back to Mumbai and teach in the same college. That was a part of the British Council contract kind of thing. But unfortunately, we had to come back within 2 weeks. And that was very hard for me because I never thought about that I would ever wanted to live here. I had my job there as well, teaching, and I was painting there. And actually, as an artist, I was doing well in Mumbai. But coming here, it was like I had a broken career from Mumbai, and I had to start all over again here in London. While I was a scholar here, I was traveling in Europe and America, and I also felt that watercolor never really changed in the sense how oils and acrylic change. So you can see how medium itself had shifted in time. But if you look at watercolor, it still remain pretty flowers and sweet landscapes. And that really frustrated me in order to not being able to really get the strength of color. So, I mean, I was taught like that you wet your paper, and tape it on a board and you work while it's still damp. So you can get actually the kind of very fast moving atmospheric landscape. But actually that wasn't enough for me. I wanted more out of it. So I started experimenting with watercolor, painting over and over. And used to make holes in paper because I was overworking on it. And then eventually I found this beautiful paper, like 640 grams, which is Arches paper. I use every manufacturer who produce watercolor paper. None of them will really stand the way I work, because a lot of watercolor paper became almost, once you paint it over, it may become like muddy, and then you can't get rid of it. But with Arches watercolor paper, I found it really gives you more when you work, almost like leather. I find when I finish the painting, you can hold the paper and stand vertical, and yet it produces beautiful strength of color, which other watercolor paper was almost dead. It's such a pleasure and such a enjoyment to work on a paper which enhances and reflects back. It's almost like having conversation with paper. As I initially start drawing on the paper and trying to get the composition the way I want, or the narrative of the painting, or sometime initially I'm not really aware about what I'm going to do. Sometimes I spend a lot of time staring at white paper. I always work on a piece of paper on an easel to draw with a pencil. So because I work flat, when I'm painting, but also have to look on an easel as well in order to understand and see the proportion of the figures. If I did an initial sketchbook drawing and transfer that drawing onto the paper which I'm going to paint, I do find it difficult. It not really work that way, because your thought process constant changing. It's very important for me to get the drawings correct. I go through several days really working composition. If you look at the drawings underneath, there are several drawings been erased and drawn and erased many times. And I think that is because it's a thought process, working process. When I start painting, I initially have a sort of vague idea, although it's impossible to really know what color you're going to do. And also, watercolor is normally used very watery, and I don't use too watery or not too, impasto kind of thing. I use like a fluid, like a running kind of color. So you're actually loading a color, a pigment within your brush, and not just simply doing the washes. When you're doing first sort of layering of color is never enough. It doesn't have a kind of strength which I want from the painting. You have to make sure that once you paint the color, you have to let it dry, but otherwise it will just bleed into other color. Initially, I used to wait for color to dry in order to paint another color, but now I use sometimes hair dryer to speed it up. Otherwise, it'll take me even many months. Painting and mixing color onto the paper rather than on a palette also gives a tremendous depth. For example, if I wanted an orange color, then I would paint yellow first and then let it dry and then paint it red over it. And when you mix it on the paper itself, it becomes like orange color. But doing this, when you mix on the paper, it actually injecting color into the paper. The color goes deeper into the fiber of the paper, and therefore you needed a very thick paper. And when you're using watercolor brushes, it totally damages when you're mixing it. I mean, this is what happens to the brush when you actually mixing color onto the paper. So it totally ruins your brush. But then at the same time, I use those brushes regularly. So I do not mind having ruined brushes, few of them. That is the reason I use oil paint brushes, which is easy to mix because they're harder than watercolor brushes. And that's how, from my own mistakes, actually, I developed this way of working. It gave me beautiful texture surfaces. When you're looking all the images of my work on a screen, you actually cannot see the texture of the paper. And when you look at the real work, then you can see it. Sometimes, when you're working on a painting, some color work and other doesn't work. So you have to go back to that painting and paint it over again. I use a blotting paper in order to take excess color or paper or water from the paper. Otherwise, I'll be totally soaking paper, which could be more damaging. if you're breathing, you can look at your pulse. It actually moves, you shake slightly your hand. So when I'm doing very detailed work, then I would stop breathing for a few seconds in order to get the things which I want within the painting. Layering color is fascinating because it gives a tremendous depth to the color and surface, which we rarely see in watercolor. And this is the reason I also said that how watercolor is not really explored in the way oils and acrylic has done. It has a tremendous kind of luminosity, or some people actually say it's like a stained glass windows, the kind of the strength of color which you can achieve with. I mean, many people actually think it's not watercolor. They don't believe it's watercolor. They look like oils or pastels or acrylic or but this is because it's nobody actually spent that much time doing so much layering on color. And 4 feet 5 feet will take me about 4 5 months to do one painting. So I think in today's time nobody has that much time to spend on one painting. Everybody wants to do ever fast moving. I mean, some of the artists actually can produce the whole show in 6 months. It will take me 6 years to do one show. And that's the pace I am working on. But I'm not in a hurry. I do not believe in producing quantity. I'm interested in quality of my work. My color palette is quite limited in a sense. You will see handful of color dominating many paintings, and I think that is a lot to do where I grew up. I think I grew up in the remote village where we had mud wall houses with ochres walls and red roof tiles, brilliant blue skies. And mainly earth colors. So browns and all these colors I grew up with. So I think sometimes these the physicality of thing influence does affect your practice as well. Another thing I really find it hard to be able to deal with it blues and greens. I managed to use blue, which is warm blue, like a ultramarine or mixed with red. So what it does is mutes the blue into sort of warm blue, and I really enjoy that. I think it's very important to find a kind of material which suits to your temperament and nature of your work. I work natural light. I actually tried to work in artificial light, but unfortunately, next day I had to change all the thing because the shade of color. I tried all different lights. People say, oh, do daylight bulbs and all sorts of, nothing really works because the shade of color which you see in artificial light and when you see in the natural light is totally different. So then I only decided to do work in natural light. So the light is very important to me. A lot of event in my life itself is a kind of moving experiences, because if you look at my work, it's quite a bit of autobiographical thing I experience in life, which inspire me or trigger things I would like to paint. I use in that process, I have friends and families I often painted. So these things always kind of inspirational in terms of travel, meeting people, even in doing your daily things, something triggers, and that really leads into a kind of painting. When TFL saw my mural in East London, which I painted in 1985, they asked me whether I was interested in doing the mural in Brixton. And that was fascinating because I always find the mural is challenging and fascinating in terms of the work itself, but also in terms of, I always say, a lot of people, in the society who do not go to museums and art galleries. And I think it's a mural does that role, that you're bringing art into the public, into the community. And I think that's fantastic. I wasn't able to paint the mural on the site. I had to do on a scaled watercolor in my studio. The small work is beautiful and enjoyable, but also the large work gives you the freedom of and the scope within the color and images. I really enjoyed every moment of working on a mural. And when it was enlarged on a vinyl, I was worried about what kind of reproduction they would be able to, whether they will be able to do justice to the color and the figures. And I think I was really surprised to see such fantastic results. You could actually even see that it was a watercolor and not any other. Being an artist, you have to face yourself every day. It's not easy. It's very daunting. You have to listen to your own voices, how you feel about things, and it feels comfortable, what is important to you. You cannot use literally every color on a rainbow, because also it has to create a kind of mood within your work, and those mood dominate your own spiritual journey. And I'm never really interested in the sense that I should be fit into the system or in the fashion. I always believe in just working your own way and looking art from your own standpoint. Look at your own journey as an artist. So you really have to look deeper into yourself. The process and the kind of getting where you want to get in your painting is like agony and ecstasy simultaneously, because when your painting works the way you want it, it's very uplifting feeling. It's like a joyful. It's amazing, but when it doesn't work, it's like you always question why the hell I want to paint. You go backward and forward within the painting. When some area works, other area doesn't work. But what is fascinating is that each time you do some work, it very enjoyable, uplifting feeling you get. And I think that's what art should do. It's like a theater, music, poetry. It touches people. And I always believe that if your art doesn't touch people, I think I fail as an artist. And that's what I believe in. Painting draws you into itself. And sometimes when I'm painting on one painting, I don't want to go anywhere. I don't want to do anything. I really so much focus in that work. At certain point, you do feel that okay, this painting is now fun. You come to a saturation point. You can't go beyond that, and that's the time I stop working, so it's not overworked. I mean, if I continue, I can still work. In fact, all of the painting I still can work, but you make a choice. You decide that this is it. You cannot go beyond that, and that is that. You have to believe in yourself, what you practice. And I think you got to think about other people will only believe if you believe in yourself. Nobody is going to come to you and think about you. First and foremost, I think it's very important that you focus on to yourself in order to what you want to achieve.